I love you.
I love you too.
Together is a gruesome body horror film about a couple falling apart, emotionally and physically. But is there more to it than just gross out gore? Today, I'm breaking it down. No scores, just honest thoughts on the performances, visuals, story and themes. Now, Together is the feature debut from director Michael Shanks, and I've been following Shanks' filmmaking journey for a while. Starting from his sketches on YouTube, to his work with Auntie Donna, and eventually to his excellent short film Rebooted, which, if you haven't seen, is so creative, heartfelt, and loaded with personality. It's available on YouTube, check it out. So, when I heard he was finally making his feature debut, I was genuinely excited, at least until the plagiarism allegations started casting a shadow over the project. But we'll come back to that later. In terms of timing, Together couldn't have arrived at a better moment. After the breakout success of The Substance last year, body horror is having a bit of a cultural resurgence, and this film clearly hopes to ride that wave. But the big question is, does it actually succeed? Well, kind of. It's a bit of a mixed bag, definitely more yes than no, but let's break it down. The film stars real-life couple Dave Franco and Alison Brie as a pair who have moved to a small country town, hoping to rekindle their relationship and start fresh. But right from the beginning, it's obvious things aren't going well. Their dynamic is cold, passive-aggressive, and filled with unresolved tension. As the film unfolds, their emotional disconnect takes on a grotesque physical dimension, thanks to a mysterious force in the forest that begins changing their bodies in horrific, irreversible ways. This is where the film really shines. The body horror here is incredibly well done. It's gnarly, creative, and sometimes just downright uncomfortable. If you're the type of viewer who loves practical effects and visceral tension, there's a lot to enjoy here. If you're squeamish though, you might want to sit this one out. While Together doesn't quite reach the disturbing heights of The Substance, there are sequences here that had me squirming in the best way possible. One of the things I really appreciated most is how the film never over-explains its horror. The source of the body transformation is left vague, almost mythic, and that ambiguity really works in its favour. Too many horror films just feel the need to spell everything out, where something comes from, why it's happening, what the rules are. Together wisely avoids that trap, which makes sure that the horror is always unsettling. Visually, the film is impressive. There's a great use of framing and lighting, especially during the most disturbing sequences. Some of the horror moments are brief, blink or you'll miss it types, and that kind of restraint actually heightens the fear. The film creeps under your skin. It doesn't feel the need to just scream at you all the time. At times, it reminded me of Ari Aster's work, not in story, but in how it uses space, stillness, and camera placement to unsettle the audience. That said, I'd say Together is far from perfect. Let's start with the music. The score is bland at best, and actively distracting at worst. There are scenes where the music feels like it's trying to score an action sequence rather than a horror film, which really threw off the tone. I think the intent was to highlight moments of dark comedy, but it just didn't land. A stronger, more cohesive score could have elevated some of the film's weaker stretches. There are also a few minor plot holes, mostly stemming from convenience. Certain revelations are withheld until the exact moment the characters need them, even though, logically, those details would have surfaced earlier. But I should say it's not enough to break the film, but it does feel like a script that needed one more pass to tighten everything up. And now to the characters. Franco and Brie play a couple who are, quite frankly, awful, and not in a fun, compelling way. The film tries very hard to make us care about their deteriorating relationship, but it just doesn't work. They bicker constantly, there's no warmth, and even when their friends and family point out how toxic they are, they just keep spiraling further instead of, just breaking up. It's frustrating to watch. It's like being stuck in one of those uncomfortable conversations with couples, and they just don't stop taking potshots at one another. Neither character is particularly likable or redeemable, and while I understand that the film is trying to reflect real, messy relationships, it's hard to stay emotionally invested when you're actively rooting for both people to just move on. Their dysfunction ends up dragging the whole story down, especially when it distracts from the much more interesting horror elements. And now to address the plagiarism allegations. A few months back, director Michael Shanks, along with Franco and Brie, were named in a lawsuit filed by writer-director Patrick Henry Phelan. According to the suit, Phelan had pitched a similar body horror project called Better Half to Franco and Brie in 2020, a film they allegedly passed on, only to later produce together, which reportedly shares several similarities, including the ending and the song used in the ending. Shanks has denied the allegations, stating that he wrote and registered his script in 2019, and that the project was pitched to Franco through his agent. As of now, no legal verdict has been reached, and much of the case remains behind closed doors. Honestly, it feels like a messy he said, she said situation, and without public documentation, it's hard to say who's telling the truth. That said, I did some digging, and thanks to a Reddit post, found a Screen Australia funding announcement from before the Better Half pitch ever happened. It includes a project summary for Together that matches the final film pretty closely, which does lend credibility to Shanks' timeline. So, until more information comes out, I'd personally give him the benefit of the doubt. But the controversy does hang over the film and may influence how some people view it. So, to wrap up, Together has moments of brilliance. The body horror is genuinely strong, the visuals are stylish, and the concept itself is rich with potential. But when you pair that with a hollow central relationship, underwhelming music, and some uneven pacing, the result is a film that's easier to admire than it is to love. If you're into disturbing body horror, then it's worth checking out. Just don't expect to care too much about the people caught in the middle of it. But those are my thoughts, and I'd love to hear yours down in the comments below. Have you seen Together? What did you think of it? Where do you stand on the plagiarism allegations? That'll do me for this week, and I'll see you all in the next one.